alternator, earths and 5 volts. Look at all these. And power supplies. Now that's going to be my next mission, is to sort all these out. There's still quite a lot of wires to do. That's my starter. That's my start trigger, this big red wire. These orange wires are my supplies to my solenoids. So both the variable cam timing solenoids and the AVIS. And I've got some more in there. That one's alternator. There's 4 of those. Of course, the last one is the clutch for the throttle. So there's my 4 orange wires. These pink wires that I've put in here are my 5 volters. And I've got to do a little bit of grabbing because most of them are with a twisted wire. I have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Map sensor is number 1. Fuel and oil pressures, 2 and 3. TPS and APS, that's my 5. So I will continuity test those. I just continuity tested my alternator wiring, so that's all done. And then I'm going to continuity test all my earths. And they're all black orange in this loom. And the other earths on the other side are black green. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 earths. Whew. 10 earths. Start at the bottom. Oil pressure and oil temperature. I got to use my fingers. TPS, fuel pressure, map sensor, we're halfway there. Down to the gearbox, I've actually got 2 earths. If I ever run a temp sensor down there, and for the speed sensor, I run them off the earth on the ECU just fine. So there's 2 there. Resetting. Temp sensor, APS, air temp, we got to 10. So you'll never guess what I'm going to do. Yep, continuity test all of those earths, all the 5 volts, and all those power supplies. Fortunately, it doesn't actually take very long to do. The other big red wires I've got in here are power supplies. I've got 4 of them. These ones. So that's powers to coils and injectors on each side. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different wires. I kind of think that earths and 5 volts to each sensor is quite important. As such, I'm going to go through and continuity test them, and I'm going to include it, I think. I'll do it as fast as I can, because as I did mention, it is very important that these are correct, and that every sensor gets the correct 5 volt, and that all the earths for all the sensors are connected. The 5 volt rail, or the 5 volt output from the ECU, I believe there's 2 of them. There's one in the D plug, so in the D plug, and there's one in the A plug here. I don't think the C plug has got one. No, none in the C plug. So let's start with that. I'm going to link these 5 all into the A plug. So I've got 5 volts, 5 volts. I'm in the oil pressure sensor here. I'm in pin 2. This multimeter is ready to go. And none of them have got continuity. Oh, it's that one. I must have been going a bit quick the first time. So that's the oil pressure. I've got fuel pressure tucked up in the front of the fuel rail, and I've just tapped into the bung at the end there, and I've used the left hand side because it doesn't foul with anything. Pin 2. It's that one. Throttle position sensor. So this is in pin 1. We'll just double check TPS. So I've got the little picture here, pin 1, and it matches on pin 1 of the extra connector. It's that one. Then we've got the map sensor. And on the map sensor, it's got, because I'm using a link one, it's got the designations on the sensor itself. Here we go. Chances are it's this one. And the last one we have is going to be the acceleration position sensor, which is over here. And it looks like pin 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just confirm on that. On the little picture, pin 4, 5 volt. And let's hope that this beeps. Yip, whoop, woo. Right, so they need to be joined. So we're going to the A plug. And there's lots of different ways guys will join these. The basic trick to joining your 5 volts is to connect them so they all go to the ECU. Doesn't actually matter how you do it. Whether you tuck them back in the loom, bring them along and keep them in the loom. I'm going to pop them out and actually have a little offshoot, join them there, bring a connector, an extra wire back into the ECU. I do that just so you can see it. I don't mind if you can see that join, and it does allow you, if you need to do testing, you can test at that point rather than kind of hiding it away in the loom. Everyone's got a personal preference. Connect it nicely, probably not using a chocolate block. Don't use these are shit. These are not ideal. In fact, they shouldn't be used on any automotive jobs. I cut this out of a radio, so I'm going to join up these 5 volt, and then we'll come back and do the same testing. I know it's a bit boring, but we'll do all the sensor earths as well. As I said, this is quite important that it's right. So let me join these 5 volts, and then we'll test some earths. This is my shield earth, all finished off, shrink wrapped up. And here's my 5 volt. So I've popped a wire into the 5 volt out of the ECU, brought it out, brought all my 5 volts along, popped a crimp on it, and then just like this one, I'll heat shrink it. And this is my preference on doing them. With the 5 volt done and the shield earth done, it's time to move on to the main sensor grounds, or 0 volts. These will be connected to the ground out in the A plug. Ground out. Though you've also got other grounds somewhere else. There's a ground out in the D plug. There's none in the C plug at all. Same process. as the 5 volt, but this time I've got a few more because I've got the temp sensors. I'll do the whole continuity test. It's not going to take long. There's only 10 wires, so let's get into it. Oil pressure, 0 volt. So that was pin 1. Moving up, we've got we'll do the fuel pressure. So each and every one of my sensors has got a ground wire running all the way back through the loom to by the ECU. There are no joins in any of those wires until it gets to that ECU. Right, the TPS will be pin 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got some temp sensors. Air temp number 1. Oh, that was a good one. That was super easy. I've got an air temp at the back. I don't always run that second air temp. But I want to do a comparison on manifolds, temperatures between the intake and the going down the port. That gearbox plug, there's 2 earths in that. So if I want to put a gearbox temp in it, I can. Or for the sensor down the back there, the gearbox speed sensor. 4 to go. Map sensor. Again, those map sensors have got the wiring on them. Acceleration position sensor, that's pin 3. Water temp sensor. And one more. I know what it is. Yes, I did have to take a moment. I put a oil temp sensor in here. And it's this one. Here's our 10. So the same deal as these ones. I'm going to put the little joiner in. Let me get in and get that done. I split the earths off here and into there. So some of them are into the A plug, some of them are into the B plug. So these are the sensor earths, or 0 volt, which is probably a better terminology. You'll notice I've used the A and B plugs. I just split them up. It just takes the pressure off each side a little bit, but in fact it makes bugger all difference. They all come from the same place inside the ECU. If you don't believe me, let's have a very quick look at that. So I've tucked into the A plug and the B plug. I got my multimeter. Continuity. Righty ho, what do we got left? some power feeds, the main earths. We'll just get rid of this multimeter. A tester tool. We've got some earths to go into the plugs. So the earths are very straightforward. On the bottom right hand corner of the plugs, there are grounds. These are good clean grounds. Got that one too. So the A and B have got two grounds. The C and D have just got the single ground in each corner. So I've got a heap of nice ground wires here, and we'll run them to each plug. With the earths connected in each corner of each plug, that's the main lot of wiring all done. I've got no more wires coming from that engine going to the ECU. We're all done. I have a spare earth. So next I'm going to run the last lot of wires that run over to the fuse box. On this corner I've got my auxiliary outputs. These ones. For the fuel pump, for the drive-by-wire relay, a couple of fans. I need a power supply for here and here, and they will be separate. Going to chuck a power supply in here and an ignition switch in there. The main relay circuit. For the main relay circuit, I don't really need to use it on this particular option. That's for doing with resetting of stepper motors and the likes. But it's kind of a common practice because I do so many standard computers, they all have a main relay output out of the ECU. Old habits die hard. I'm going to also make sure I go pop some power into the D plug, the 12 volt. Not strictly necessary, but it just prevents any funny things happening in there. I just find it seems to work better if I do that. The auxiliary outputs will be all set to negative. So that's quite straightforward. And I'm going to run them out to a plug, and then we'll move into the fuse box. I'm also going to run the CAN wires out, the communication wires. Two of them will be going to the dash, and that's what that extra earth was I considered having that for. But I think I'm going to have the dash plug into the fuse box. It's going to reduce the number of plugs on the engine loom. And I just think it's going to be a bit better practice if I have an engine loom, have the fuse box that everything plugs into. So the body, the car can plug into the fuse box, and we don't have dash then plugging in off the engine loom. So let me run some extra wires for those bits. We'll have a bit of a chat. Kind of a couple of things as I'm doing it. So I've popped in the bottom of here, there's two CAN channels. They're for communication lines. One of them is going to be for an OBD2 plug. I know it's a race car, but I still think it's cool to be able to communicate with your phone. The other one will be for the dash. And yes, this is getting a link dash, and I'll pop that in the video. And I'm really struggling with this because this zip ties in a different way to that zip tie. So this is the D plug. I've run the power in. I've run the two CAN channels, high and low. I use the yellow as a high because yellow is sun, green is grass, so that's down low. And they're going to run out, and one of them is going to go to that fella, the dash, and the other is going to an OBD2 plug. Right, moving to the next plug. This is going to need an ignition and the main relay output. There's just two wires going into that one, two extra wires. Now into the B plug, I'm putting a 12 volt supply, or it says it's a 14, a switched voltage, and that's going to come from its own relay because I'm using drive-by-wire throttle. So that one's on its own one. And I've got a couple of digital inputs. One is going to be a start signal, and that will allow me to have like fueling for when it's cranking, hopefully to improve start over not having fueling when cranking. Just having it on key on isn't quite as efficient, and a brake switch if we ever run it. Now I'm putting the last power feed into the A plug, and I'm using some of the auxiliaries. Give me a moment just to consider what auxiliaries I'm doing. Oh yep, fuel pump, that one. Couple of fans. And the drive-by-wire relay. Go on there, come on. Oh, there it is. And once those are in, you push the tabs down to lock all the pins in place so they can't come out. And I'm going to run these out to some plugs, and we'll terminate up some plugs, and that will be this engine loom done. I think the loom is done until it's all tested. All the wires in, plugs out to here. Have to write up a sheet of where the numbers of where all the wires are on these plugs. So the next thing to do will be to build up a relay box and a fuse box. I'm going to call it quits for the video, and I'll put the relays and fuses into the next one, because that one will make up a pretty good video on its own. So I'm going to call it quits on this one for the moment. So I hope that's been helpful, and we'll talk to you again soon.